Episode 5, Systems Thinking. Welcome to the 5th episode of the Lean English Podcast. My name is Tom, and I will be your host. Thank you for joining me. I know I promised you that I would publish real conversations in English after episode 4, but I live in France and everyone is on vacation right now. If you have never visited France, here is a little hint. From the beginning of July to the end of August, everyone goes on vacation. And if they are not on vacation, they are dedicated to doing as little as possible. Every 3 weeks, they take turns. Half of the country finds a place to go camping or decides to visit a friend who lives by a beach, while the other half stays at work. They somehow keep the country running, but no business decisions are made. In fact, if you are trying to do business in France, you had better plan on making arrangements before May, because everyone is already making summer plans by then. This was my mistake. I started asking friends to sit down for a podcast in June, which was way too late. So I decided to go ahead with another educational episode. Today we're talking about systems thinking and the 5th discipline, subjects that support the process improvement methodologies that we covered in our first 4 episodes. But if this is your first time joining us, you might be wondering how I got here. I hate talking about myself, so I summarized the past 17 years into a quick timeline of important events. 2009, met French girl. 2011, married French girl. 2014, had kids. 2017, started listening to French podcasts to improve my French. 2022, moved to France. 2024, started teaching English, created my own training company. 2026, received Calliope certification for students who want to use their CPF to fund my courses. Last month, started the Lean English Podcast to give English learners information on how to improve their business. And now you're up to date. Thank God that's over. Now we can get back to the topics for today: systems thinking and the 5th discipline. But before getting into systems thinking, let's do a quick review of the first 4 episodes. Episode 1 was an introduction to my company, the podcast, and process improvement theories. We covered major events in the discovery of important tools and principles, and then talked about the pros and cons and differences between Lean, Six Sigma, and Agile. Lean is synonymous with the Toyota production system because it was developed by Toyota over decades of trial and error. Six Sigma was created by engineers at Motorola as a project management methodology using probability and statistics for advanced problem solving and process improvement. Agile is a term for many types of software development that use iterations and lean principles to meet customer demands in a changing marketplace. Episode 2 focused exclusively on lean. There are 14 main principles that help frame Toyota's process improvement mindset. Lean challenges everyone in the organization to find where they add value to the product and remove unnecessary, wasteful activities. Part 2 of the Lean episode was all about the tools and techniques that anyone can implement in their company. One of Lean's many benefits is how easily it can be adapted into your daily activities. There is a very low barrier to adoption, and most of the tools can be implemented without new technology. And the benefits can be enormous, as shown by the performance of some of the most profitable companies in the world. If this sounds interesting to you, listen to the second episode to learn more. Just as episode 2 covered lean, episodes 3 and 4 were strictly about Six Sigma and Agile, respectively. For processes that require statistical analysis and experimentation for quality improvement, Six Sigma offers the tools, training, and infrastructure to optimize your product and performance. Six Sigma uses 5 phases to define the problem, measure its impact, analyze the pertinent data, improve the product, and control the outcome. Six Sigma requires that all projects must improve the company's profitability. There is some overlap between Lean and Six Sigma tools, and they are often taught together as one methodology called Lean Six Sigma. In episode 4, we see that Agile is software development based on the 4 values and 12 principles of the Agile Manifesto. It uses an iterative approach to deliver working software and new techniques to ensure the team writes high-quality code. Traditional forms of project management take too long to develop software. The development teams would spend months identifying all the possible requirements for the product, then spend a few more months on design. All this would happen before any code is written. As Agile is based on Lean, the team minimizes waste activities and gets started developing the product as soon as they have a basic understanding of it. This is because the developer and the client are no longer in adversarial roles. Agile transforms their relationship into a collaboration that shortens the delivery time because the client gives continual feedback as the software is developed. But let's not dwell on the past. This is the agenda for our 2-part episode today. As usual, Part 1 will start with the definitions, principles, and philosophy of systems theory and systems thinking. Then we will dive into Peter Senge's seminal work, The Fifth Discipline, and how businesses can use systems thinking to become learning organizations. Part 2 is when we will discuss how to create and use causal loop diagrams to understand the systems you are investigating. If you are familiar with process mapping, causal loop diagrams function in much the same way. They are graphs that show how parts in a system interact and influence each other. Learning to read these diagrams takes time, but we will go step by step. Then we will cover the 10 systems archetypes, 10 commonly occurring patterns in businesses and markets that show you how to escape vicious cycles. A vicious cycle is a complex chain of events that reinforces itself through a feedback loop with detrimental results. Each iteration of the cycle will continue to produce negative outcomes until an external source breaks the pattern. This is contrasted by a virtuous cycle, which is a pattern that continually produces positive outcomes. If you find your business's outcomes repeat themselves, it is because you are stuck in a system you do not understand. So let's get started so hopefully we can get you unstuck. Problems do not stay problems because they are easy to fix. It is often because we do not understand how to find the root cause, so most of our solutions merely treat the symptoms. Systemic problems, issues that recur, greatly impact your ability to run a successful business. But rarely do we find a simple, direct, linear link between cause and effect. Often the impact we experience is well removed from the cause, which creates a limited understanding of how to solve our problem. So before we can create solutions that matter, we must first understand how the system that is creating our problem operates. As our world becomes more complex and interrelated, we are often unaware of how our outcomes are generated. So we turn to systems theory. Systems theory is the study of systems and how their interdependent components influence one another, creating outcomes that cannot be understood without viewing the whole. This idea is used in other process improvement methods as well. In Lean, we see the use of cross-functional teams that work with every function in the company to solve problems. Six Sigma projects use statistical analysis and experimentation to find the root causes of complex problems, uncovering links that are not obvious. And Agile created an entirely new system of software development because the old system did not understand the dynamics of the client-customer interaction. Systems thinking is the application of systems theory in systems management. It takes the theory and puts it into practice. If your business is making decisions without taking a systems view, it can lead to vicious cycles and sub-optimization. Sub-optimization occurs when process improvement efforts are shunted by the lack of systems thinking. Local or short-term fixes are applied to a process step that improves one step to the detriment of others in the system. These band-aid fixes relieve the symptoms for a short while, and individual metrics may improve, but the problem will persist. No matter how well the one process step performs, without proper influence on the root cause of the system's problem, it will not benefit the entire system, thus ensuring that the problem continues. All activities should be evaluated by how they impact the system and, in turn, the product or service you are delivering to the customer. Now for some important vocabulary. A system is a collection of interacting parts where behavior from one part influences the other parts. Influence from outside the system's boundaries is less influential than influence inside the system, so don't expect a solution to come from an external source. You must change the system from within. System behavior is understood only by viewing the whole, not individual parts. Systems are too complex and influences are typically non-linear. Feedback is a process by which the results of an activity or action are returned to the actor in a way that influences the behavior of that actor. Positive and negative feedback can occur and change behavior in different ways. Systems thinking works to change outcomes by understanding how the system works and using that knowledge for problem solving. A part of a system is anything that generates influence on another part. For example, a part in a company's system can be resources such as workers, heavy equipment, tools, and raw materials. They can also be intangible items such as leadership, quotas, values, and plans. Influence is measured by the impact one part has on another part during an interaction. For example, a deadline imposed by leadership during a quarterly meeting interacts with managers, workers, and suppliers to influence change. When stepping back, we see that the deadline itself is influenced by a part in a larger system like customer demand, the company's stock market price, or a competitor's business decision. Only through systems analysis do we see them all connected. Researching how your company acts will take a lot of time and a lot of truth telling. We know that complex systems rarely create linear relationships, so investigating cause and effect requires executive level support. Peter Senge mentions in the fifth discipline that companies who wish to become learning organizations must confront the systems they have created, regardless of the outcome. As we say in America, no one wants to hear that their baby is ugly, and no executive wants to take the blame for bad decisions. So any team that evaluates a company's systems to find the cause of major problems must have the authorization from a senior executive and be separated from the chain of command. Otherwise, they may be punished for revealing the truth about an executive's work. But remember that influences inside a system are more powerful than external influences, which means that most of a company's problems are caused by themselves. So here is a word of caution. Be prepared to upset some people. So, why use systems thinking? You can choose to develop a systems approach to solving your problems for many reasons, but the most common is that you are taking actions that do not provide the results you anticipated. Unseen systems contain forces that either negate or reduce the impact of your actions. Some systems are unseen because we do not know how to see them. Others are unseen because we choose not to see them. For either reason, we must understand them to create the outcomes we desire. To be successful, everyone in the company must contribute to this effort of seeing reality, seeing the systems that determine and shape the company's future. To do this, an organization must learn how to learn. Peter Senge describes a learning organization as one that is continually expanding its capacity to create its future. Learning in this context does not mean acquiring more information, but expanding the ability to produce the results we truly want in life. Real learning is a company's ability to truly see the world around them, understand how their actions and the actions of others are created in a system that produces complex outcomes, and know how to react to changes within the system. It is not about taking in information, it is about understanding our system so we can create the outcomes we desire. Senge outlines 5 disciplines practiced by learning organizations to tap people's commitment and capacity to learn at all levels in an organization. First discipline is achieving personal mastery. People with high levels of personal mastery are continually expanding their ability to create the results in life they truly seek. The second is shifting mental models. New initiatives fail to change our results if they conflict with pre-existing mental models, views of how we see the world. Seeing truly how the world works will be difficult if we are not able to challenge our current beliefs. The third is building shared vision. Individuals do not sacrifice their personal interests to the larger team vision, Rather, the shared vision becomes an extension of their personal visions. The fourth is team learning. Companies cannot learn unless groups of individuals with limited perspectives come together to share their experience and collaborate honestly. Individuals must balance advocacy with inquiry and must not overlook or hide disagreements to get along with others. Conflict is a natural component of change. The fifth is systems thinking, the discipline that ties the other four together, because without it, a team will develop short sighted, symptomatic solutions. Collaborative teams with the best intentions will nonetheless fail. These are Sengi's 3 learning capabilities. Fostering aspiration means helping people set and pursue collective, long-term goals, align their personal mastery with shared vision, nurture ambitious thinking, and release collective energy toward desired future outcomes within a learning organization. Developing reflective conversations means fostering dialogue that helps people think critically about their assumptions, mental models, and the interdependencies within an organization. It enables deeper learning and shared understanding that supports adaptive change and a collective vision. Understanding complexity. There are 2 types of complexity: detail and dynamic. Detail complexity is when you can find simple cause and effect relationships. Dynamic complexity deals with situations where cause and effect are subtle and where the effects over time are not obvious. The real leverage in most management situations lies in understanding dynamic complexity. What are the things that keep your organization from learning? Sengi outlines 7 learning disabilities that hinder personal growth and restrict organizations from seeing how they create their own problems. I am my position. When people in organizations focus only on their position, they have little sense of responsibility for the results produced when all positions interact. They will often strongly defend the status quo, believing if the work they are performing is causing problems, then they personally are under attack. The enemy is out there. The enemy is out there syndrome is actually a byproduct of I am my position and the non-systemic ways of looking at the world that it fosters. This can cause us to look outside the organization to find the source of our problems. A bad leader will often identify a scapegoat to blame for all the company's ills. The illusion of taking charge. All too often, proactiveness is reactiveness in disguise. Whether in business or politics, if we simply become more aggressive fighting the enemy out there, we are reacting, regardless of what we call it. Good leaders do not need a negative event to begin improvement projects. The fixation on events. The primary threats to our survival, both of our organization and of our societies, come not from sudden events, but from slow, gradual processes. Generative learning cannot be sustained in an organization if people's thinking is dominated by short-term events. This keeps us from learning to create and seeing influences that are not obvious. The parable of the boiled frog. If you put a frog in a pot of hot water, it will immediately jump out. If you put it in cold water, but slowly increase the heat, it will sit in the pot until it boils. Learning to see gradual processes requires us to slow down our frenetic pace and pay attention to the subtle as well as the dramatic. The delusion of learning from experience. Most events are greatly separated from their causes. We never directly experience the consequences of many of our most important decisions. What we do today will have long-ranging implications, events that we will never be able to see as relating to today's actions. The myth of the management team. Most management teams break down under pressure, writes Harvard's Chris Argyris. The team may function quite well with routine issues, but when they confront complex issues that may be embarrassing or threatening, the teamness seems to go to pot. Poor teams squelch disagreement, have people who avoid stating reservations publicly, and joint decisions are watered down compromises or reflect only one person's opinion. These management teams are unable to solve complex problems because they are unwilling to speak the truth or challenge authority if it hurts someone's feelings. These are the laws of the fifth discipline. These are statements of truth that Senge outlines in his book that help guide companies to become learning organizations. Today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. Many of our activities have unintended consequences. As a personal trainer, I often saw individuals who wanted to lose weight in a very short period of time begin intense physical training and unsustainable diet plans. This would cause significant short-term weight loss. However, when taken to this extreme level, the activity would cause injuries, followed by periods of inactivity and depression, leading the individual to gain back all the weight they had lost. The harder you push, the harder the system pushes back. This is called compensating feedback. In Haiti, after the earthquake in 2010, foreign governments sent tons of food aid to help the devastated country. However, local farmers complained that all the free food had destroyed the market for Haitian goods. Farmers were unable to sell their crops, and if the aid continued, the farmers would be out of business. The more governments provided aid, the harder it would be for Haiti to find a long-term solution for their food shortage problem. Behavior grows better before it grows worse. Low-leverage interventions would be much less alluring if it were not for the fact that many actually work. But compensating feedback usually involves a delay, a time lag between the short-term benefit and the long-term disbenefit. This delay explains why systemic problems are so hard to recognize. For example, law enforcement agencies may increase patrols in bad neighborhoods to reduce criminal activity. Crime goes down, and people believe that patrols are the solution to the problem. However, patrols merely treat the symptoms. Since the causes of the crime are not yet being addressed, after a period of time, the criminals simply move to a new area that is not being patrolled. The easy way out usually leads back in. Pushing harder and harder on familiar solutions while fundamental problems persist or worsen is a reliable indicator of non-systemic thinking. A square peg will not fit into a round hole just because you use a bigger hammer. In America, we say work smarter, not harder. The cure can be worse than the disease. Sometimes the easy or familiar solution is not only ineffective, sometimes it is addictive or dangerous. The long-term consequence of applying non-systemic solutions is the need for more of the solution. The phenomenon of short-term improvements leading to long-term dependency is very common. I remember an anti-drug ad from the 1980s. A businessman is rationalizing why he uses cocaine. He explains, I take cocaine to have more energy, so I can work more, so I can make more money, so I can buy more cocaine, to have more energy, so I can work more, so I can make more money, so I can buy more cocaine. The ad was so effective, I stopped using cocaine at age 11. Just kidding, I still take it. How do you think I finish these podcasts? Faster is slower. Faster is slower because when we are in a hurry, we create defects that need to be repaired, losing all the time that was initially saved. We see the same principle throughout lean management. A slow, steady pace we can maintain for a long time that focuses on quality offers the organization the best chance to meet customer demand. Cause and effect are not closely related in time and space. There are no simple rules for finding high leverage changes, but there are ways of thinking that make it more likely. Learning to see underlying structures rather than events is a starting point. Thinking in terms of processes of change rather than snapshots is another. Don't focus on the results, focus on the process. Small changes can produce big results. Systems thinking shows that small, well-focused actions can sometimes produce significant, enduring improvements if they're in the right place. The principle of Kaizen in Lean is a perfect example of this law. Too often we are enamored by the stretch goal, the top of the mountain, the New Year's resolution. We forget that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step and needs to be followed by 1,000,000 small steps. You can have your cake and eat it too, just not at once. For years, American manufacturers thought they had to choose between low cost and high quality. They didn't believe that these apparently contradictory benefits were able to be produced by the same system. They only appeared as rigid either-or choices because the American system was built on adversarial relationships between workers and management. The Japanese system was built on a more collaborative relationship, allowing Japanese manufacturers to harness the creativity of their workers in problem solving. Dividing an elephant in half does not produce two small elephants. Living systems and organizations have integrity. You cannot simply remove a department from your business because it is not performing up to standard. Understanding challenging managerial issues requires seeing the whole system that generates the issues. There is no blame. If we focus on blaming one another, we will never get together to solve our most important problems. Systems thinking shows us that problems are not created in a vacuum. There is no other separate system that is causing all the problems. For example, when confronting a global crisis like climate change, we must realize we are all in this together. We are all part of a single system, the planet Earth. There is not one country or organization that is causing all the problems. The cure lies in managing our relationship with our perceived enemies. There is no roadmap that provides the best way to become a learning organization, but there are essential components. Leadership commitment and active participation are critical to set the example that learning is required by everyone. As I stated earlier, only executive support can push an initiative like this. Enterprise-wide training in systems thinking and understanding the mental models is a good first goal. Promote personal mastery in employees who seek to improve themselves. The best systems are pull systems. It is difficult to push this discipline on someone who is either unwilling or unable to accept change. Provide incentives for individuals and teams that challenge the status quo and search for the causal links to both successes and failures. Initial training is not enough. Systems thinking must be supported by ongoing events and seen as the only way forward. Otherwise, people will regress to old habits. Create diagrams for as many systems as you can find and experiment with leverage points. Everyone needs to be involved so they can provide insight into unseen influences. Well, that covers our review of systems thinking and the fifth discipline. We will cover causal loop diagramming and systems archetypes in part 2, so stick around if you're interested. If you are enjoying the material or have a suggestion on how to improve the podcast, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, be good, and I'll talk to you later.